Ethan Carter checked his watch for the third time, a nervous tic he had developed over the past week. The cruise terminal buzzed with the excited chatter of passengers, the scent of saltwater heavy in the air. Beside him, Olivia adjusted the strap of her sun hat, her auburn hair glinting in the morning sun. She smiled, a hint of anticipation sparkling in her green eyes. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, her voice a mix of excitement and curiosity. Ethan nodded, though his jaw was tight. "Absolutely. A week away, just us, no work, no distractions. It's perfect." They moved through the crowd, dragging their suitcases behind them, the sound of wheels clattering against the terminal floor. Ethan noticed the way Olivia's hand brushed against his, casual yet intimate. A small reassurance, perhaps, for both of them. Boarding the cruise ship, the Ocean Serenity, felt like stepping into another world. Gleaming white decks stretched endlessly, punctuated by polished wooden railings and the distant laughter of children playing near the pools. Crew members in crisp uniforms guided passengers, their smiles professional but distant. Olivia let out a soft gasp. "It's beautiful." Ethan put his arm around her shoulder. "Just like the brochure promised. Imagine the sunsets from the upper deck every evening." As they walked past the grand atrium, the ship's interior dazzled them with marble floors, sparkling chandeliers, and a fountain that seemed to float in the middle of the hall. Ethan felt a brief twinge of pride. He had meticulously planned this honeymoon, every detail calculated to perfection. That evening, after settling into their suite, they dined at the ship's restaurant. The soft hum of a piano mixed with the clinking of cutlery, creating an ambience both elegant and intimate. Olivia laughed at a story Ethan told, the sound light and melodic, and he found himself relaxing, genuinely smiling for the first time in days. "You know," Olivia said between bites of her seafood entree, "I didn't realize you were this funny." Ethan chuckled. "I have my moments." His eyes lingered on hers, searching, measuring. There was love there, yes, but also something unspoken, a layer beneath the laughter. After dinner, they strolled along the upper deck. The ocean stretched infinitely around them, dark and mysterious, waves catching the moonlight. Ethan held Olivia close, inhaling the scent of her hair, feeling the warmth of her body against his. For a moment, the world seemed suspended, the two of them floating on a dream of endless possibilities. "Promise me something," Olivia said softly, her head resting on his shoulder. "Anything," Ethan replied instinctively. "No secrets," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the gentle roar of the sea. Ethan swallowed, the words catching in his throat. He nodded, though a small part of him bristled at the notion. "No secrets," he said. As the ship sailed into the open Caribbean waters, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this voyage would change everything. The horizon was wide, endless, and beautiful, but somewhere beneath the glittering surface, a storm was quietly gathering. The morning sun poured through the suite's floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the soft cream and gold decor. Olivia stirred, stretching luxuriously, the sheets slipping from her shoulders. She paused, glancing at Ethan, who was already up, scanning the itinerary for the day. "You're up early," she murmured, her voice still thick with sleep. Ethan turned, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I like to plan. You never know what surprises a cruise can throw at you." Olivia sat up, swinging her legs over the side of the bed. "You mean like hidden fees at the spa or overcrowded pools?" Ethan laughed lightly. "Or, unforeseen adventures." His gaze lingered on her, a mixture of warmth and something unreadable. Breakfast was served at a terrace cafe overlooking the turquoise Caribbean waters. The gentle rocking of the ship made the pastries and coffee sway slightly, adding a surreal quality to the morning. Olivia watched seagulls dive into the waves, feeling the tension of the past months dissolve under the sun's warmth. "So," she began, stirring her cappuccino, "what's the plan today?" Ethan pointed to a map of the ship. "We start with a snorkeling excursion. Then, a lunch buffet, followed by a dance class. You've mentioned wanting to learn salsa." Olivia laughed. "You remembered." Ethan's smile was genuine, but his eyes flickered briefly to the sea beyond the railing, a restless glance that went unnoticed by Olivia. The truth was, he hadn't just remembered the salsa, he had scheduled the entire day to ensure everything went smoothly, to control every aspect of the trip. As the day progressed, small cracks began to appear in their perfect facade. In line for the snorkeling trip, a fellow passenger bumped into Olivia, spilling water onto her sundress. Ethan's jaw tightened, his hand brushing against hers with a grip a touch too firm. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice low, almost protective, but with an edge that Olivia felt but didn't fully understand. "I'm fine," she replied, though a flicker of unease crossed her face. The snorkeling excursion should have been idyllic: warm water, vibrant coral reefs, and schools of colorful fish gliding effortlessly beneath the surface. Olivia laughed, delighted, but Ethan remained close, watching her movements, ensuring nothing happened that might disrupt his carefully curated paradise. Back on deck, as the sun dipped lower, Olivia commented on the other passengers. "It's strange, people seem so distant. Like they're all hiding something." Ethan smiled, a little too quickly. "Or maybe that's just your imagination running wild." She looked at him, searching his face, sensing a subtle defensiveness she couldn't yet name. The romantic veneer of their honeymoon was beautiful, intoxicating, but beneath it, a tension simmered, invisible yet palpable. As the evening approached, they returned to their suite. Olivia leaned against the balcony railing, the breeze tossing her hair, and Ethan stood slightly behind her, eyes fixed on the horizon. Neither spoke for a long moment. The Caribbean stretched endlessly, serene yet unknowable. "Promise me again," Olivia said softly, her voice barely rising above the wind, "no secrets." "Not here, not now." Ethan's throat tightened. He nodded, forcing a casual smile. "No secrets." But as the ship sailed further into the deep, blue expanse, both knew that sometimes, even promises couldn't keep the truth submerged. Night had fallen over the ocean serenity, and the ship glowed under a canopy of stars. The lights from the upper deck shimmered against the calm waters, reflecting in gentle ripples. Ethan and Olivia strolled slowly, the sound of the ocean a soothing backdrop to their quiet conversation. "Did you see that couple earlier?" Olivia asked, pointing subtly to a pair of passengers laughing loudly near the pool. They seemed off. Almost tense, like they were hiding something. Ethan chuckled softly. "Maybe everyone's got a story. That's part of the charm of cruising, isn't it?" Olivia studied him for a moment, sensing the difference between his words and the tone in his eyes. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes, a shadow lingered there. They reached a quieter part of the deck, where the soft hum of the engines and the occasional slap of water against the hull were the only sounds. Olivia leaned against the railing, gazing out over the endless dark expanse. "I love this," she whispered. "It's peaceful, almost unreal." Ethan stepped close, his hand brushing hers, a touch light but deliberate. "It's perfect," he agreed. "Just you and me. Nothing else matters." For a moment, the world seemed to pause. But then a scream tore through the distance, a passenger shouting from the pool area. Olivia flinched. "Probably just someone startled by the water," Ethan said, though his hand tightened slightly around hers. Later that evening, during a quiet dinner in the ship's dimly lit restaurant, Ethan seemed distracted. He kept glancing toward the deck windows, where moonlight painted silver trails on the water. Olivia noticed the tension in his posture, the way his fingers drummed against the table, his knife and fork trembling slightly. "You okay?" she asked, reaching across to touch his hand. "Just tired," he replied. "These early mornings and excursions take it out of you." But Olivia's intuition whispered that something was amiss. There was an unease in Ethan, subtle but unmistakable, and a part of her felt a cold shiver of foreboding. After dinner, they joined a small gathering in the lounge where a pianist played soft jazz. The crowd clinked glasses, laughter drifting through the room, yet Olivia felt a strange detachment. The passengers moved like actors in a play, masks concealing their real selves. Later, as the couple returned to the deck, the night had deepened. The Caribbean was dark, almost menacing in its beauty. The wind picked up slightly, tugging at Olivia's hair, and the waves crashed gently against the hull. Ethan leaned closer, whispering, "This is our world tonight. Just us." Olivia smiled, but a small knot formed in her stomach. There was something in his tone, an intensity that was almost possessive. She dismissed it as honeymoon nerves, but deep down, unease lingered. As the clock struck midnight, Olivia leaned on the railing, staring into the endless water. A shadow moved near the edge of the deck, fleeting but unmistakable. She glanced back at Ethan. "Did you see that?" she asked, unease creeping into her voice. "See what?" Ethan replied smoothly, masking his concern. "I thought I saw something." Ethan's smile returned, but his grip on her hand was firmer now. "Probably just your imagination," he said. Yet his eyes betrayed a hint of something darker, an unspoken tension that neither waves nor moonlight could wash away. And in that moment, beneath the tranquil beauty of the Caribbean night, a whisper of danger began to stir, a silent promise that this honeymoon was far from ordinary. The next morning, the Caribbean sun rose in a blaze of gold, spilling light across the upper deck. Ethan sipped his black coffee, eyes scanning the horizon, while Olivia stretched lazily in the lounge chair beside him. The warmth should have been comforting, but a subtle tension hung between them. "You've been quiet," Olivia said, her tone gentle but probing. "Something on your mind?" Ethan looked up, smiling, but the smile didn't fully reach his eyes. "Just thinking about the day ahead. The excursions, the dance class, making sure everything goes smoothly." Olivia tilted her head, sensing the difference between preparation and obsession. "You don't have to control everything, Ethan. That's the whole point of this trip, relaxing." He laughed softly, but there was a hardness beneath it. "Relaxing for you, maybe. I like knowing everything's perfect." Their conversation ended there, not with warmth but a quiet tension that neither addressed. As they boarded the tender boat for a snorkeling trip at a nearby cove, Ethan's eyes remained vigilant, scanning the water and the other passengers with a subtle possessiveness. The cove was idyllic, crystal-clear waters, coral reefs teeming with fish, and sunlight dancing across the waves. Olivia dove gracefully, her laughter echoing in the water. Ethan followed closely behind, watching her with a mixture of admiration and unease. He surfaced beside her, his eyes scanning the horizon for anything that might threaten their controlled paradise. Back on the ship, lunch brought a change in mood. A group of passengers at a nearby table shared whispers and furtive glances, stealing occasional stares at Ethan and Olivia. Olivia noticed their curiosity and commented lightly, "It feels like everyone's watching us." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Probably just curious travelers. Don't let it bother you." But the sense of scrutiny lingered. Olivia found herself glancing around more often, feeling eyes on her she couldn't account for. A waiter dropped a tray nearby, clattering cutlery across the floor, and Ethan's hand immediately gripped her arm with an intensity that startled her. "Ethan?" she asked softly. "I'm fine," he muttered, his voice low. "Just startled." As the afternoon wore on, the couple attended the dance class. Olivia twirled gracefully, her laughter light and unguarded, but Ethan remained close, his hand guiding her movements a touch too firmly. When she tried a freer step, he subtly corrected her posture, asserting control under the guise of instruction. Later, walking back to their suite along the dimly lit deck, the wind carried the scent of salt and distant storms. Olivia paused, gazing out over the water. "Do you ever wonder about accidents?" she asked, her tone almost casual, yet her eyes searched Ethan's face. He stiffened, an involuntary reaction. "Accidents?" "Yes." Falling overboard, disappearing, her voice trailed off, but the question hung between them, a shadow in the night. Ethan's expression remained calm, but his mind raced. "We're safe here," he said smoothly. "Nothing like that will happen. I promise." Olivia nodded, though unease lingered. There was something in the way he spoke, a subtle insistence that made her stomach twist. She let it go, dismissing it as a fleeting thought, yet deep down, a whisper of doubt had been planted. As night fell again, the ship's decks were quiet, illuminated only by soft lanterns. Olivia leaned against the railing, the water reflecting the moonlight like liquid silver. Ethan stood behind her, his presence comforting yet possessive. The Caribbean night was tranquil, almost hypnotic, but beneath the calm, the first ripples of unease had begun to spread, hinting at the storm that would soon engulf their honeymoon. The morning began like any other, with golden sunlight spilling over the ship's decks. Ethan sipped his espresso in the suite, glancing at the clock and then at the empty side of the bed. Olivia had already gone out for her morning jog along the upper deck, or so he told himself. He stood, stretching, a faint tension pulling at his shoulders. Something about the day felt different, though he couldn't pinpoint it. As he stepped onto the deck, the crisp Caribbean breeze swept past him, carrying the scent of salt and tropical blooms. "Olivia," he called softly, his voice almost swallowed by the sound of waves. No answer. He walked along the promenade, eyes scanning for her familiar figure. The deck was unusually quiet, only a few early risers enjoying the sunrise. His stomach twisted in unease. Minutes passed. He approached the railing, looking out over the shimmering water. A sudden panic gripped him as he noticed the expanse below, still, endless, and empty. "Olivia!" He shouted again, louder this time, his voice cracking. Crew members appeared from the corridors, their expressions alert as they noticed his distress. "Sir, is something wrong?" a steward asked, hurrying to his side. She's gone. I don't know where she is." Ethan's words tumbled out, raw and urgent. His heart pounded in his chest, and for a fleeting moment, he stared at the open sea as if she might somehow appear on the waves. The ship's intercom crackled. "Attention all crew, report any missing passengers immediately," the captain's voice commanded, calm yet firm. Within minutes, the upper deck was alive with activity. Crew members swept the area, searching cabins and public spaces, while Ethan provided a shaky description of Olivia. Other passengers gathered, curiosity and concern mixing in murmurs that carried across the deck. "Did she leave the ship?" a passenger whispered nearby, eyes wide with fear. Ethan shook his head violently. "No. She couldn't, she wouldn't." His own words sounded hollow even to him. The search intensified, with lifeboats lowered for a perimeter sweep. Yet the sparkling Caribbean waters offered no trace of Olivia. Panic and disbelief rippled through Ethan, his mind racing with impossible scenarios. Hours passed. Crew and passengers alike grew tense, the atmosphere thick with worry. Ethan remained at the railing, staring into the blue abyss, every wave seeming to mock his helplessness. Finally, the ship's captain, Marcus Reynolds, approached, his presence calm but authoritative. "Sir, we're doing everything we can. We've notified maritime authorities and initiated a full search. I need you to stay here and provide us with details of her last known movements." Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. She was jogging. We had breakfast. His voice broke. He struggled to remember the minute details, each fragment of the morning now tainted by fear. By late afternoon, the search returned empty-handed. The realization began to sink in among the passengers and crew: Olivia Carter was truly missing. Ethan, alone on the deck, felt the weight of the situation press down on him. The Caribbean sun, once so bright and inviting, now seemed to glare down, harsh and accusatory. As night fell, the ship's lights shimmered on the restless waters. Ethan sat alone in the suite, replaying the morning in his mind, each memory scrutinized, each action questioned. He repeated her name in the darkness, a mantra against despair, yet a part of him feared the truth: the ocean, vast and merciless, had swallowed her whole. Yet even as the crew and authorities accepted the apparent tragedy, a single thought lingered in Ethan's mind, a seed of unease that he could not shake. Something about that morning, about Olivia's disappearance, felt wrong. The honeymoon, meant to be a celebration of love, had become a nightmare from which there was no waking. The next morning, the ship's dining hall felt oppressive, the usual clinking of silverware and soft chatter replaced by a tense silence. Crew members whispered in corners, their eyes darting toward Ethan, who sat alone at a table, staring into his untouched coffee. Detective Sarah Mitchell, called in from the nearest port authority, stepped aboard with a calm yet commanding presence. She was in her late 30s, sharp-eyed, and carried an air of meticulous authority. Her gaze swept the room, noting the reactions of passengers and crew alike. "Mr. Carter?" she asked, approaching his table. Ethan rose quickly, his hands trembling slightly. Yes, that's me. I'm Detective Mitchell. I need to ask you some questions about your wife's disappearance," she said, her tone firm but not unkind. "Please come with me." Ethan followed, trying to mask his anxiety with controlled composure. As they walked through the quiet corridors of the ship, he noticed the subtle glances of other passengers, curiosity tinged with judgment. "Can you tell me exactly what happened yesterday morning?" Detective Mitchell asked once they reached a small conference room near the bridge. Ethan took a deep breath, recounting the events as clearly and calmly as possible. "We had breakfast, and then Olivia went for her morning jog along the upper deck. I stayed behind, checking the itinerary and making sure our plans were set. When I went out to look for her, she was gone. I called her name, searched the deck, and then we alerted the crew." Mitchell listened attentively, jotting notes. "Did anyone see you together that morning?" "No, just the few passengers at breakfast. But no one saw her go overboard or anything like that." "I swear, I didn't leave her side for long," Ethan said, his voice steady, though a faint tension crept in. "Were there any disagreements between you?" "Anything that could have led to an argument?" the detective pressed. Ethan shook his head quickly. "No. Absolutely not. We were happy. This is supposed to be our honeymoon." Mitchell nodded, her pen poised. "Sometimes, people interpret happy differently. I'll need to verify your timeline, Mr. Carter. Did anyone else see your wife after breakfast?" Ethan's eyes flickered, hesitation barely perceptible. "No, she went jogging alone." Detective Mitchell studied him for a moment, her expression neutral but penetrating. "Mr. Carter, I understand this is difficult, but it's my job to look at all possibilities. Accidents do happen, but we also consider foul play. You understand, don't you?" Yes, of course. "I just want her found," Ethan replied, voice strained but composed. Meanwhile, the captain convened a small meeting with crew leaders and the ship's medical officer. Search protocols were reviewed, lifeboats checked, and surveillance footage from cameras along the decks was pulled. Yet nothing definitive appeared. Olivia's last known movements remained unclear. By evening, Dr. Angela White, the ship's medical consultant, was brought in to prepare for the worst. Her reputation preceded her, calm, precise, and unflinchingly honest. She noted every detail, her mind working through scenarios with clinical efficiency. As Ethan returned to his suite, the weight of suspicion pressed down on him. He replayed his story in his mind, reassuring himself that it made sense, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Detective Mitchell's eyes, sharp and questioning, lingered in his memory. Someone was watching, scrutinizing, and he knew that even the smallest slip could unravel everything. In the quiet of the suite, Ethan sat by the balcony, staring into the dark Caribbean waters. The reflection of the moon shimmered across the waves like fractured glass. Somewhere beneath that serene surface, a secret waited, one that might soon surface, whether he was ready or not. The next day, the atmosphere on the ocean Serenity was tense. Passengers whispered behind hands, their curiosity sharp and intrusive, while the crew moved with practiced efficiency, attempting to maintain calm. Ethan walked the deck alone, each step measured, his eyes scanning the endless expanse of water. Yet beneath his composed exterior, a knot of unease tightened with every wave. Detective Mitchell returned that morning with a new set of questions. She invited Ethan to the small conference room again, her expression unchanging, calm but unyielding. "Mr. Carter," she began, "we've reviewed the deck surveillance footage. There are some discrepancies in your timeline. Can you clarify what time you left the suite and when you last saw your wife?" Ethan swallowed, glancing down at his hands. I left the suite shortly after breakfast, around 8:15 a.m. I saw Olivia leaving for her jog just moments before that." Mitchell's eyes narrowed slightly. "The footage suggests you left closer to 8:30, and that a passenger saw her heading toward the railing around 8:25. Can you explain the difference?" I might have misremembered," Ethan said quickly, forcing a casual shrug. "It all happened so fast. I didn't think the exact minute mattered." Mitchell scribbled notes, her pen moving with deliberate precision. "Sometimes, details do matter, Mr. Carter. Especially when someone is missing." Meanwhile, Dr. Angela White examined the suite and surrounding deck areas. She noted scuff marks near the railing and a slight disturbance in the sand from the decorative potted plants. Nothing definitive yet, but subtle signs of struggle, or at least unusual activity, were visible. As she spoke with the ship's security team, she remarked, "There's something off here. These marks don't align with a simple morning jog. We need to look deeper at every interaction on the deck that morning. Back in the conference room, Mitchell's questions dug deeper into Ethan's story. Did your wife carry anything with her? Keys, jewelry, phone? Did anyone see her approach the railing? Ethan hesitated, the air thickening with unspoken tension. She had her smartwatch, and her sunglasses. That's all. I didn't see her near the railing. I was checking the itinerary inside the suite. Mitchell leaned forward. Yet a passenger reported seeing her in that vicinity. Are you certain you didn't see her yourself? Ethan's mind raced. He had rehearsed this story countless times in the previous hours, but even the smallest inconsistency could unravel everything. No. I didn't see her near the railing. I swear, he said, his voice firm, though a tremor betrayed his inner agitation. Outside the room, passengers whispered. Crew members exchanged glances, noting the tension that thickened the ship's usually relaxed ambience. And beneath the calm professionalism of Dr. White and Detective Mitchell, a subtle sense of unease began to take hold, a feeling that the truth was more complicated than it appeared. As night fell over the Caribbean, Ethan returned to the suite. The waves glimmered under the moonlight, but instead of calm, they mirrored his restless mind. Every sound, every shadow seemed amplified. Somewhere in the vast darkness, the truth waited, and Ethan knew that sooner or later, it would surface, revealing secrets he had tried desperately to keep hidden. The morning sun rose over the ocean serenity, but the usual cheerfulness of the cruise was absent. Crew members moved silently, passengers whispered anxiously, and the upper deck felt unusually empty. Ethan walked along the railing, rehearsing his story, but the unease within him had only grown. Detective Mitchell returned with Dr. Angela White, both carrying folders thick with notes. Their presence immediately drew attention from nearby crew and passengers. Mr. Carter, Mitchell began, her tone calm but firm, we've spoken to more passengers. Some saw your wife near the railing shortly before 8:30 a.m., which conflicts with your timeline. Can you explain? Ethan's jaw tightened. I must have misremembered. Everything happened so fast. I didn't notice the exact time. Dr. White interjected, her voice clinical and precise. We also examined the railing and nearby deck area. There are scuff marks consistent with someone struggling, perhaps a hand gripping or pushing. Nothing definitive, but it raises questions. Ethan's mind raced. He nodded, forcing a calm expression. I see. I didn't notice anything unusual when I stepped outside. Mitchell's gaze was piercing. We'll also need to review the ship's internal cameras. Any surveillance footage that could clarify movements during that time. Meanwhile, a fellow passenger, Mrs. Linda Hayes, approached the group. Her hands trembled slightly, and her eyes darted nervously between Ethan and the authorities. I saw her, she stammered. Olivia, she was arguing with a man near the railing. I couldn't see clearly who, but it wasn't long before she disappeared from my sight. Ethan's stomach churned. You saw what? He asked, voice tight, forcing a neutral tone. Just a heated discussion, near the railing, Mrs. Hayes repeated. I didn't think it mattered at the time. I thought it was a friendly argument. Mitchell and White exchanged a glance. Thank you, Mrs. Hayes. Your observation is important, Mitchell said, her tone careful, avoiding alarm but noting the significance. Dr. White knelt near the railing once more, examining the subtle scratches and imprints left in the polished wood. These aren't consistent with a simple jog or someone leaning over to enjoy the view, she muttered. There was force involved. Ethan forced himself to nod, masking the sudden panic that churned within. He replayed the morning over and over in his mind, trying to maintain consistency, aware that any slip could unravel his carefully constructed story. Later, as the day progressed, the authorities reviewed the ship's internal camera footage. A faint silhouette appeared on the upper deck, a fleeting figure near the railing, Olivia, alone for just a moment, and then, nothing. The footage was inconclusive, but it added weight to the inconsistencies already noted. By evening, Ethan returned to the suite, tense and restless. The room felt suffocating, the gentle Caribbean breeze through the open balcony unable to soothe him. Outside, the moon cast silver trails across the restless waters. Each ripple seemed to whisper a question he could not answer. Somewhere, beneath the calm surface of the Caribbean, the truth lingered, waiting to surface. And Ethan knew, with a sinking certainty, that the coming days would test every lie he had told, every secret he had kept, until nothing remained hidden. The Caribbean sun beat down mercilessly on the upper deck, but the warmth could not reach the icy tension surrounding Ethan. He moved through the corridors of the ocean serenity like a ghost, every glance from crew members and passengers seeming to pierce through him. Each step echoed with uncertainty, each whisper a reminder that the truth might already be surfacing. Detective Mitchell returned once more, accompanied by the ship's administrative officer, to question Ethan in private. "Mr. Carter," she began, her voice firm but measured, "we need to understand more about your relationship with your wife. Were there tensions recently? Any arguments or conflicts?" Ethan hesitated, swallowing hard. "Conflicts? Not really, we had disagreements, like any couple. Planning a wedding, moving, work stress, nothing out of the ordinary." Mitchell's pen moved swiftly over her notebook. "Nothing out of the ordinary can sometimes hide a lot, Mr. Carter. Any financial troubles? Insurance policies? Anything that could be considered a motive?" Ethan's throat tightened. He forced a casual shrug. "We had a joint account, investments, nothing extreme. No life insurance or anything like that." Mitchell's eyes narrowed. "We'll verify all of that. Mr. Carter, sometimes the smallest details make the difference. The truth has a way of revealing itself." Outside the room, a young crew member approached Dr. White. "Doctor, I heard some passengers discussing that Mr. Carter seemed unusually tense during the past few days. They even mentioned heated words with his wife." Dr. White frowned, noting the subtle behavioral cues. "Stress can alter memory, but it can also reveal underlying patterns. We should examine any psychological signs. If someone was panicked, fearful, or unusually controlling, it matters." Later, a second witness came forward, a steward who had served breakfast on the morning of Olivia's disappearance. "I noticed Mr. Carter arguing quietly with a woman who wasn't my usual guest," he said hesitantly. "It looked intense. I didn't think much of it at the time, but, now, I'm not so sure." Ethan's stomach churned. Each new account added pressure, each whispered observation carved away at the carefully curated image he had tried to maintain. By evening, the ship's lounge was a subtle battlefield. Passengers murmured among themselves, casting glances toward Ethan. Crew members whispered to each other, reviewing every action and conversation. Detective Mitchell and Dr. White pieced together the timeline, cross-referencing statements, camera footage, and eyewitness accounts. Ethan retreated to the suite, closing the door behind him. He paced the room, attempting to reconcile the day's revelations with the story he had rehearsed so many times. His mind replayed every conversation, every interaction, every small disagreement with Olivia over the past months. The tension, though often dismissed, had been real, and perhaps now, in ways he hadn't anticipated, it mattered. The Caribbean night fell, dark and silent, yet for Ethan, sleep remained impossible. Somewhere beneath the calm surface of the ocean, beneath the scrutinizing eyes of witnesses and investigators, the truth waited, patient, unyielding, and ready to surface. And Ethan understood, with a chilling clarity, that whatever secrets he held could not remain hidden forever. The ship rocked gently under the Caribbean night, yet inside the suite, Ethan felt a storm he could not control. Detective Mitchell had returned with new evidence, subtle, yet potentially devastating. "Mr. Carter," she began, her tone measured, "we've examined the deck thoroughly, and Dr. White has found marks inconsistent with a simple accident. There are traces suggesting a struggle." Ethan's face remained neutral, though his hands gripped the edge of the table. "A struggle? I don't understand." "She didn't fight anyone." Mitchell leaned forward. "Witnesses reported seeing her near the railing with a man. Some say it looked heated. The marks on the deck correspond with a scenario where someone could have been forced or pushed. We also retrieved footage from cameras that momentarily caught movement near the railing. Your version of events conflicts with these observations." Ethan's stomach twisted. He nodded slowly, forcing a calm facade. "I must have misremembered the time. She was just jogging. I didn't see anyone near her." Mitchell's gaze sharpened. Mr. Carter, the timeline is critical. Every second counts. Your statements are inconsistent with multiple witness accounts. It's essential we get an accurate version. Outside, passengers whispered in hushed tones, casting furtive glances at Ethan as he followed Mitchell through the corridors. Crew members exchanged knowing looks. The initial sympathy for a grieving husband had begun to shift subtly toward suspicion. Dr. White's preliminary report added weight to the mounting pressure. The physical evidence suggests the possibility of a deliberate action rather than a simple fall. Scratches, grip marks, and displacement of objects near the railing point to force. Nothing conclusive yet, but it's enough to warrant scrutiny. Ethan's mind raced. Every lie, every omission, every minor alteration of the timeline now seemed dangerously fragile. He replayed every conversation with Olivia in his head, every moment of tension, every slight disagreement he had downplayed or ignored. Later, in a quiet corner of the deck, a young crew member approached him. "Sir, some passengers reported seeing you linger near the railing just before your wife disappeared. They say it seemed unusual, but I didn't want to say anything." Ethan forced a calm nod. "Thank you. That's helpful." Inside, his pulse surged. Each small observation, each incidental witness, was a threat to the story he had rehearsed so meticulously. By evening, the investigation intensified. Detective Mitchell compiled statements, photos, and preliminary physical evidence. Ethan sat alone in the suite, staring at the ocean, each wave reflecting the relentless scrutiny closing in on him. He knew that any misstep, any falter in his narrative, could unravel everything. The Caribbean night stretched endlessly, yet for Ethan, time felt compressed, every moment charged with the inevitability of exposure. Somewhere beneath the moonlit waves, the truth waited. And for the first time, he felt the chilling certainty that nothing, not charm, not rehearsed words, not carefully constructed alibis, could keep it submerged forever. The Caribbean wind was sharp that night, cutting through the deck like a cold reminder of reality. Ethan leaned against the railing, the moonlight reflecting in the restless waves below. His mind raced, replaying every detail of the morning of Olivia's disappearance, every conversation, every witness statement. Yet despite his careful planning, cracks were forming in his narrative, and he could feel them widening. Detective Mitchell approached with Dr. White, a folder clutched tightly under her arm. "Mr. Carter," she began, her tone calm but unwavering, "we've recovered something from the railing area that may shed light on what happened. I think it's best if you come with us." Ethan's heart thumped violently. He nodded, masking the panic as best he could, and followed them to a secure examination room near the bridge. Dr. White laid out several items, a torn piece of fabric, a single high-heeled shoe, and faint traces of blood on the polished wood of the railing. "These items were not part of normal deck activity," she said, her voice precise. "The fabric and shoe are consistent with Olivia's attire, and the positioning suggests an unexpected event occurred, possibly involving force." Ethan forced a controlled breath. I don't know how that could have happened. She was jogging, she wouldn't. I swear, I didn't touch her." Mitchell's eyes pierced him. "Mr. Carter, the evidence, along with multiple eyewitness reports, suggests that what you've told us may not fully reflect reality. We need clarity, or your presence here will remain under suspicion." Ethan felt a cold sweat break across his forehead. Every alibi he had rehearsed, every fabricated detail he had carefully constructed, now seemed fragile. The witnesses, the deck marks, the physical evidence, it all pointed to a version of events that could not be reconciled with his story. Later, alone in the suite, Ethan sat staring at the ocean. The moonlight shimmered across the waves, each ripple a reflection of his spiraling thoughts. The pressure was unbearable. He replayed every heated discussion with Olivia, every small tension, every fleeting moment where control had slipped from his grasp. His mind raced. How could I maintain control? How could I fix this? The realization struck him with brutal clarity: the truth had a way of surfacing, regardless of lies, regardless of intentions. Sleep remained impossible. Every shadow seemed to whisper accusations, every sound of the ship's hull against the water a reminder that someone, somewhere, might uncover the reality he had tried so desperately to hide. As the night deepened, Ethan felt a mounting terror, a psychological cage closing around him. The evidence, the witnesses, the relentless scrutiny, it was all inescapable. Somewhere, beyond the calm surface of the Caribbean waters, the truth waited, patient and unyielding. And Ethan knew, with a chilling certainty, that it was only a matter of time before the final revelation would shatter everything he had tried to protect. The morning light filtered through the sweet curtains, but Ethan hardly noticed. The oppressive weight of anticipation pressed down on him, each second crawling toward the moment he had feared most. Detective Mitchell arrived with Dr. White and the ship's medical officer, all bearing the gravitas of official authority. "Mr. Carter," Mitchell began, her voice calm but firm, "the forensic team has completed a preliminary examination of the evidence collected on the deck. We need to review the findings with you." Ethan nodded slowly, his palms damp, his mind racing. He followed them to a private room where the physical evidence had been meticulously catalogued: the torn fabric, the high-heeled shoe, the scuff marks along the railing, and small traces of biological material. Dr. White spoke first, her voice clinical but precise. "The fabric tear and traces found on the railing indicate that Ms. Carter did not simply fall accidentally. The position of the marks and the distribution of biological traces suggest she was pulled or pushed with some force." Ethan's throat tightened. He forced a controlled nod, though his pulse thundered in his ears. I don't know how that could have happened." "I didn't." Mitchell held up a hand. "Mr. Carter, witness statements corroborate some inconsistencies in your timeline. Several passengers reported seeing you and your wife near the railing moments before her disappearance. These statements, combined with the forensic evidence, point to a sequence of events that conflicts with your account." Dr. White added, "Additionally, the deck's position and the ship's movement patterns make an accidental fall unlikely. The physical evidence strongly suggests deliberate action rather than misfortune." Ethan's mind spun. Every fabricated detail, every omission, every rehearsed lie, exposed. The carefully constructed version of events crumbled under the weight of forensic certainty. Mitchell's gaze bore into him, steady and unyielding. "Mr. Carter, I understand this is difficult, but the evidence leaves us with no alternative but to question your account thoroughly. We are considering all possibilities, including deliberate foul play." For the first time, fear overcame control. Ethan sank into a chair, staring blankly at the floor, his carefully maintained composure shattered. The reality of exposure, the inevitability of truth, pressed on him like the crushing weight of the ocean itself. Outside, the Caribbean waves sparkled innocently under the sunlight, a cruel contrast to the storm raging within the small room. The forensic findings, the witnesses, the mounting evidence, they were all converging toward a revelation that could no longer be avoided. As Mitchell and Dr. White left him to contemplate the verdict, Ethan understood the chilling certainty of his situation. The honeymoon had ended in horror, and there was no turning back. The ocean, once a symbol of freedom and joy, now mirrored the inescapable truth. Every wave whispered the same message: secrets cannot stay submerged forever. By the time the Ocean Serenity docked at the port, the atmosphere had shifted from tense curiosity to solemn scrutiny. Ethan stepped off the ship with a hollow sense of inevitability. Every pair of eyes, passengers, crew, even port authorities, seemed to follow him, silently weighing his every step. Detective Mitchell and Dr. White were already waiting, accompanied by a team from the local forensic office. The moment was no longer a shipboard investigation. It had become official, legal, and irrevocable. "Mr. Carter," Mitchell said firmly, "the evidence from the ship has been transferred here. We will conduct a full forensic examination and collect further statements. This is now a matter under legal jurisdiction." Ethan's chest tightened. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet the formalities kept him in place. He nodded, trying to mask the storm of panic inside. Dr. White led him to a private examination room. "We'll review all the collected samples, analyze the biological traces, and reconstruct the sequence of events. The physical evidence already suggests deliberate action, and we need clarity before any final conclusions can be drawn." Outside, detectives canvassed the ship's logs, reviewing cabin entries, passenger interactions, and the surveillance footage. Each minute detail was cross-checked against witness accounts. Every discrepancy, every hesitation in Ethan's prior statements, was carefully noted. Hours later, a senior forensic analyst entered the room, holding a folder thick with preliminary results. "Mr. Carter," the analyst began, the analysis confirms what was suspected: the evidence on the deck cannot be explained by an accidental fall. The patterns of force, the biological traces, and the positioning of objects indicate that Ms. Carter did not fall by herself. The possibility of foul play is significant. Ethan felt his knees weaken, the folder trembling in his hands. He forced himself to remain upright, aware that any reaction could be scrutinized. Mitchell spoke next, her voice calm but decisive. "Mr. Carter, at this stage, our investigation strongly contradicts your initial account. We will continue to gather corroborating evidence, but the trajectory is clear: the simple accident narrative no longer holds." Ethan sat in silence, staring blankly at the table. The ocean he had loved, the Caribbean waters so bright and beautiful, now seemed a silent witness to the unraveling of his life. The honeymoon horror had followed him from the deck to the dock, from the imagined safety of lies into the cold, clinical clarity of forensic truth. As the day faded, Ethan realized that escape was impossible. The investigation, meticulous and unyielding, had stripped away every layer of deception. The truth, relentless, unforgiving, and absolute, stood revealed, waiting for its final reckoning. The Caribbean sun set, casting long shadows across the port. And in those shadows, Ethan understood the final, inescapable truth: some secrets, no matter how carefully hidden, cannot remain submerged forever. The courtroom was silent except for the soft shuffle of papers and the occasional cough. Ethan sat at the defense table, his hands clenched tightly, eyes fixed on the polished wood of the floor. Across the room, Detective Mitchell and Dr. White had taken seats among the observers, their expressions calm but resolute. The prosecutor stood, reviewing the evidence once more. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady and precise, "the events surrounding the disappearance of Olivia Carter have been investigated thoroughly. Forensic analysis, eyewitness accounts, and physical evidence from the cruise ship all point to deliberate actions inconsistent with an accidental fall." Ethan felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Every lie, every omission, every manipulated detail had led to this moment. He had rehearsed defenses, imagined arguments, even attempted to control the narrative, but now, nothing could shield him from the truth. Dr. White was called to testify. She described the scuff marks on the railing, the biological traces, the torn fabric, and the high-heeled shoe. All evidence indicates that Miss Carter did not fall accidentally. The patterns suggest the presence of another party, force applied, and an event inconsistent with a simple misstep. Mitchell then recounted the discrepancies in Ethan's statements, the conflicting timelines, and the witness observations. These inconsistencies, she concluded, combined with the forensic evidence, leave little doubt that Mr. Carter's account cannot be reconciled with reality. Ethan's defense attorney attempted to maintain composure, questioning the interpretation of evidence, suggesting alternative possibilities. But the meticulous documentation and multiple converging accounts left the arguments hollow. When the verdict was finally read, Ethan's world tilted. Guilty, manslaughter, negligence, and obstruction of justice. The words hit him like the relentless waves of the Caribbean, each syllable eroding the carefully constructed image he had fought to maintain. Alone in his cell later that evening, Ethan reflected on the events of the past days. The honeymoon, once a symbol of love and new beginnings, had transformed into a nightmare of his own making. Every decision, every lie, every suppressed tension with Olivia had contributed to this irrevocable outcome. Outside, the moonlight glimmered on the distant waves, calm and indifferent. Somewhere beneath those waters, Olivia's fate remained, a silent, tragic testament to the consequences of hidden motives and concealed truths. Ethan realized, with a chilling clarity, that the ocean had mirrored his own psyche, beautiful on the surface, but dark and turbulent beneath. The forensic truths, the eyewitness accounts, and the unyielding weight of reality had exposed everything he had tried to hide. As he sat in silence, the inevitability of justice settled over him. The honeymoon horror, born from secrecy, deception, and suppressed tension, had finally reached its conclusion. And the truth, relentless and unforgiving, had risen to claim its due.